Well, thank you, Mr. Reed, for being here. Following a very interesting conference that you offered, um, entitled Healing Earth in 18 Months, we received a lot of questions. So thank you so much for taking the time today to answer a few of those questions. So my name is Roxanne. I'm a landscape architect and I'm working with Sopper Nature Canada. And I'm going to be the one that gets to ask those questions. And hopefully, if you want to rebound on those questions, feel free to go outside of the realms of a very interesting topic, a very interesting conference that I listened through not once but twice to get all of the information, a lot of stuff in there, and definitely appreciated all of the input that you gathered from different authors and researchers that really brought into perspective what regenerative design is as you are working with it. What I understood and what I gathered from the conference, there was a lot of discussion that your work is aimed towards human interaction with nature, community awareness. And I have to say that a lot of the questions that we received, our auditory was architects, a lot of architects and professionals. So a lot of those questions go back to the technical and mechanical aspect of regenerative design. So the first question that we got, taken into account, of course, the human interaction with nature, what is the biggest challenge that we face when this green transition, as we see it being a technical or a mechanical thing related to the building and the urban development? What's the biggest challenge that the authorities and industry will face after this green transition has been made?
Well, I don't think we are really going to make a green transition unless we go beyond the technical. Just having more photovoltaic panels or green roofs or water purification systems or better indoor air quality, all that is really important stuff, but it doesn't create the kind of relationship that we need to have with the natural systems that support us, nor does it create the kind of relationships we need to have with each other in order to achieve that relationship with nature. So the whole technical side of things, to say whether it's I'm an architect, and I'm one of the founders of the LEED rating system, and that's really important stuff. However, it is insufficient to create the sustainable condition we need for life to continue on this, for human life to continue on this planet. Life will continue. Boy, I want to go in quite a few directions here. We have, climate change. We're so focused on climate change, and rightfully so, and we're focused on carbon in terms of the climate change. But it's interesting that from our perspective, climate change and carbon in the atmosphere is a symptom. It's not the problem. And it's a symptom of our lack of collaboration and support of the living systems that support us, and the complexity of working with evolutionary processes, as opposed to thinking that we can fix things by putting bolting on something, some green technology that will somehow make it all better. And I think I talked about this in the talk. So what we as architects and planners and building owners need to understand is that every opportunity we have to build a building is also an opportunity to work with the community that the building is built within. And it's working within that community that where the real leverage takes place. So if I can actually have the stakeholders that are concerned about a building or engaged in wanting to design a quality building or a building that's going to serve the community or serve its workforce in a positive way, it always impacts community. how can we engage those stakeholders to understand that this gives us an opportunity to look at a new role for being in relationship with each other and the quality of life that needs to be an outcome of thinking that way. So when we work with, I'm kind of raging all over the place, but what the heck? When we work with a building, we start out here. We don't start with the building. Because if we're not understanding and focused on what value we can add to the health of the social and ecological environmental system, what good does the building do? It can house us, but it has no other positive benefit other than just housing a workforce or housing us for housing residential occupants. So if we work out here and say, what value do we in this unique position need to add to this system to allow it to be healthy and whole, then we can understand how the building needs to respond to that influence. That is a much deeper contextual understanding of design than most architects and clients expect the project to address.
Thanks. So if I understand correctly, then whether it is an existing building, a renovation, addition, or a brand new development, these concepts and this way of thinking design would be based on the same structure and can be applied similarly to existing and new.
Yeah, it can be, although it is much easier to work with new because most people resist change. And when something new gets helicoptered in or dropped into a community, it's an opportunity to have a discussion, to have a relationship. If you're just renovating a building, it doesn't stir up energy. So basically what we're looking for are people to say, wait a minute, why is that building here? And that restraint or that, that, if you will, blocking, wanting to resist something new to be implemented in a community is an opportunity to have a richer discussion about how we need to live here, as opposed to just accepting status quo. Now, with existing buildings, you can make, we rarely have done that, but you certainly can make that an opportunity to engage community members. But here's the cool thing about renovation is that, well, I'll just take it from an apartment building perspective. When you're working as a developer with apartment buildings and housing, that gives you an opportunity to be in continual relationship with those occupants and how you then can engage their understanding and perspectives in working with the larger community to create quality of life in that place. And if you're a building owner, that only speaks to bottom line benefit. Because if you create quality of life and meaningful social structure around a project you have, that increases your bottom line. In fact, we're working with a couple developers right now who have discovered 2 additional profit centers because of working this way. Not only do they make money from the building and the rent, but they make more money because they have much less turnover rate in the occupants of the building, so they don't have to spend time and have vacancy, empty apartments, for instance. Also, they're experiencing much lower maintenance costs because the people respect one another and are growing in relationship with one another, and that allows their maintenance costs to be significantly reduced. And they now are telling me that it's very strong profit centers just working with the community in that proactive way. So when these developers build buildings now, they stay engaged for the life of the building, they don't just turn it over and sell it off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of what I understand is that this design it's based on community, and what the example and case studies that you presented in the conference had an expanding radius of dozens of kilometers around the actual spot that was asked to design.
Right.
How can regenerative design be applied to small scale projects, and how do you engage people on a small scale rather than a bigger scale where all of the community and the surroundings are implicated? Is that even possible?
Sure. Why not? Well, let me give you an example. It's an illustration that one of my colleagues came up with. It may not relate to everybody who's here, but if you have children, you'll be able to relate to this. I think you can relate anyway. So imagine designing a bedroom addition for your growing family on your house. And I want you to tell me if this example works for you. So imagine designing a bedroom addition for your family. What would you have to do to realize that bedroom addition? And simply it would be maybe hire the architect, hire a builder, get the permitting done, get the financing done, right? That all makes sense?
Mm-hmm,
okay, so now let me shift that question. Imagine designing a bedroom addition for the purpose of developing your children.
They would be implicated also in the discussion.
Yeah, well, who do you have to be, and what do you have to do to realize that purpose for the development of your children?
A good parent, a listening parent, and
Yeah,
implicated in their life.
Yeah, so now imagine this bedroom addition. If I want to develop my children, what issues do I want to consider? I would want to consider my children, of course, and who they want to be, but perhaps I want my children to be street smart, and maybe I should move to a city so that they actually experience what it's like to be in a dense urban environment. Or maybe I want them to be a farmer, or maybe not I want them to be, maybe they want to learn about nature. So maybe we move to the suburbs and we move to a rural area, or maybe we engage the children in exposing them over time to the different kind of environments that surround our house and engage them differently in terms of developing them. It's just not the bedroom addition, it's who I am with them in relationship. One guy, when I asked this question, stood up and he said, he's the first guy who ever responded to this metaphor. He said, I realize I'm pretty screwed up. The whole audience went, what is this guy going to say? Is he a little insane? And he said, get over yourselves. And everybody went back like this. He said, get over yourselves. We are all screwed up. He said, what I realized in working on that question, Bill, is that I have to work on who I am to develop my children in a healthy way. So not only do we so there's multiple dimensions when we care about the evolution or the evolving health of our children. Are you following this, Roxanne?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So this is what regeneration is about, is being conscious of who I need to be, who we need to be as a family, and the impact, the effect that our family has on the environment outside of us. It is it's much more expansive than just focusing on building a bedroom addition.
It seems that the sense of self and how you relate to other rather than how you relate to places and buildings and surroundings is the basics of what you are describing.
Well, it's not either or, it's all of that. Mm-hmm. It's a whole system. And when we talk about a whole system, we are basically defining all the energies that are present in that system, the social systems, the environmental systems, the way microbes work in the soil, the way the sun hits the ground, the way the trees, the type of habitat that's around there, the political structures and social structures that actually link people together. All of those make each place unique. And we don't have to spend much time. We're working on a number of projects right now. It takes us about 2 weeks to meet with people in a community and actually help them think about the larger system they're part of and how to value that and how to engage in a new way. And then as the project is developing, we're actually meeting with the community members who are interested for at least a year, but probably 3 to 5 years, so that they are actually beginning to get used to people don't change overnight. It's a practice, right? And I think I said this in the conference, that it's an ongoing practice. Mm-hmm. And we use the ongoing process of building a building to engage the community in developing this kind of new field of mutual respect and purpose.
The same could be said about a family.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
same can be said about any organization.
Mm-hmm.
What family? So it could be, anyway, I think you get the point.
Yeah, definitely. Well, when we talk about the organization, we went really small, talking about a family in the bedroom. How about we expand it and go to bigger, for example, government deciders and conceptors, and their scope of work is very strict. It's very compartmentalized. Is it how can architect within this scope of work, government offices can incorporate or engage to work regenerative design and community factors into the way that they design urban spaces and that they talk about design within their scope of work?
Yeah, with great difficulty, actually. Government is the least responsive to this way of thinking because of the bureaucratic processes that, they're put into very narrow silos, and everybody has a job description that they are responsible for. And if you challenge them, invite them to think outside their box, they don't have the authority to do so. So we find government's one of the most difficult entities to work with because of that reason. We do work with governments, and we work with large governments, but you have to have a strong leader in the government to say, we are going to do this. So that's why we feel, in our experience, the last 25 years of doing this work, we've had private developers are our biggest clients because they're used to taking risk. They have vision. A lot of them are actually tired of doing the same old thing and doing it in a bad way, and they want to do something positive for the earth. So they have been the dominant client type for us. Mm-hmm. But we're working with a very progressive mayor in the state of Massachusetts right now, who is a dream. She's wonderful, and she's powerful, and she knows how to lead the bureaucracy in a way that is inspirational.
That's very important.
Not reactive. So you have to pick your targets with this. Not everybody is a good client for this kind of work.
So you would say that to work with government, you need to find a strong, forward-thinking leader within that government to instate change.
Because everybody else will run. If it's not a good leader, most people will try to hide and run for protection rather than take risks.
Yeah, of course. And the government and municipal contracts and the work that they do, whether it's urban development or building construction, is often given in regards to costs and lower bidding.
That is the worst argument, by the way. And of course,
I know.
And of course, it comes up every time. Listen, I think I might have said this in the conference. We work with at-risk developers who are making so much more money doing this work. Mm-hmm. When you have, think about it this way. If you have people resisting development and you hire lawyers to fight the community and public relations firms to put spin and sizzle on a bad deal, you spend a lot of time and a lot of money. If you make friends with the community and collaborate with the community, literally saves years of time. Mm-hmm. And in fact, these developers say it is hard for them, and these guys are deep financial guys, they're multimillionaires, and they say, we find it amazing that developers can't figure out that you want to be friends with people as opposed to fight them. When you think about it in those terms, it's remarkably stupid. Mm-hmm. But all we know how to is do command and control, generally command and control. This is what I want. I'm going to do this. And if you don't like it, I'm going to fight you. Mm-hmm. When we go into communities, we make the premise that the developer deserves to make a profit. Nature works for the profit. Profit is needed. You have to be able to reinvest into the future, whether it's cherry blossoms and seeds on the ground for future cherry trees. It's the same way with finances too. So capitalism on the surface is not bad. It's capitalism with greed behind it that is bad. Mm. And by the way, these developers that I'm talking about are doing superb community benefit work, spending much more time and resources working with the communities. But the one thing we say is that the developer deserves a profit, and very, very few people resist that concept. Well, yeah, they need a profit, but they can't come in here and tell us what needs to be built, and that's fair. So we say, the developer, we need to work with the community and with the ecosystem to find out what really is needed here.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of problems in our urban infrastructures, and in Quebec, for example, with poorly done work, poor quality material 30, 40, 20 years ago. And today we're facing a crisis in the supply chain, international supply chain, in scarcity of material, rising costs. Do you think that all of these can be a trigger or an incentive for people to bring awareness to what we can do with what we have, and start working in the way that you are describing?
Yeah, I haven't really thought about that implication as an inspiration or force for change. I think so, Roxanne. I hope so. What's useful about what you're bringing up is that any restraint on the system, which is what we're describing, right? We can't get materials, things are costing too much. That's a restraint. It holds us back, right, from business as usual. Well, restraints breed creativity. Mm-hmm. And hope, because, how am I going to solve this problem? Right? It's no longer business as usual.
Well, you mentioned garden in the Second World War, where people were feeding themselves, and the lack of food brought this. So maybe this is an opportunity as well.
Yep, it is. I think it really is. Mm-hmm. And we're working with a small Canadian company up in Calgary, struggling, but nonetheless very interesting, using hemp block, which is probably 40% less expensive than existing construction, highly insulative, fire resistant, earthquake resistant, the way the frames are designed, very cool stuff. So I think that we will see a burgeoning of new materials come on the market as a result of these pressures. I mean, you can't get good 2x4s. Wood, the quality of wood is so bad now, it's almost not worth buying. And it's so expensive. Anyway, that's a whole other
side. I'm gonna go way off track with a different question. We had a lot of questions about, as you say, like technical and materials and all of this. And a lot of people inquired also about the human aspect. So when you presented the five sectors that needed to be addressed and that would work together to create these interactions, one was about personal development and spirituality. So how do you think that spirituality effectively has an effect on how people interact with each other?
Well, I'm going to change your question. Well, certainly spirituality has an effect if you're actually conscious, and by spirit I mean people that you're aware that our interactions can be highly respectful and loving of one another, or it can be disrespectful and hateful, right? And where would we rather be? We would rather be in the care and the love side of things. I don't think that's arguable right now. The question that I think I would want to ask and have answered is, how do you do that in the design process? Is that the role of the architect or the engineer or the developer to increase spirituality? I don't think it is. However, it is an opportunity for people to become conscious of themselves and to take responsibility for their actions. So we had one client who got that idea, said, yes, we're going to get people to respect one another and love one another, and they're growing spirituality. And he was going to force them to take different kinds of human, personal development programs. And we said, oh, no, don't do that. You can't force anybody to do that kind of thing. All you can do is say, this is the way of being, how we want to be with each other in this design process. And what we do, Roxanne, is we ask people, who do you need to be to be most effective in this group. And we want you to observe yourself when you're having positive effect on people, and observe yourself when you're having negative effect. And if you can remember when the positive effect is effective, take that lesson and take it home with you. And we also, as we go further in a project, we invite people to give permission to maybe make observations about each other if you're being offended, or you feel that you're not being motivated by the way a person's working with you. Mm-hmm. That's really up to the dynamic of the group. All we do is we help people become conscious of who they need to be effective. And so when I go to a group, I say, listen, I can be a jerk sometimes. And I can be offensive sometimes. I don't want to be, but sometimes I am. And if I am, I give you permission to call me on that. Give you permission to say, Bill, you're being a jerk. Stop being a jerk. Well, how am I being a jerk? Well, I want to know. And just me doing that as an example is the beginning of an invitation for others to do it.
Mm-hmm. So rather than spirituality, then it would be more to be self-aware and open to other and very humble, I believe.
I think that's right. And I would call that spirituality, but the source of that is whatever spiritual tradition or none, or any, it's not up for me to judge or to invite. What is up to me, and it's important, is that we as a group, as a design team, and as a client design team, and as a community, are actually wanting to have respect for one another and wanting to improve our relationships, to develop new potential.
Yeah, thank you for that. Another out of the blue question here. We've seen space exploration being very open. We have tourists now going to space. We are pushing off to remote location more and more. Are there questions or concerns that should be addressed and asked now as to how we will impose ourselves in space and how we do space development, where regenerative design, or this sense of self that you are describing, should be taken into account or maybe asked while we're doing this exploration and this push off to space?
Well, I think the answer is obvious. We're doing a big experiment here on Earth as well. Whether it happens on Mars or the moon or Earth, it doesn't matter. So we are going into massive collapse on this planet. It's happening already. It isn't in the future. It's happening now. There's going to be a tremendous loss of life rapidly. And we're going to have to take stock of that and reinvent ourselves. And the kind of politics that's going on in the United States is absurd and obscene and can't be sustained. And that's happening in other places too, but just to use the United States as an example, I think Canada has some aspects of that going on, not nearly as much. But until we figure that out, we are going to repeat the same mistakes. And we'll repeat them here on Earth. There's going to be people left. We're not going to lose humanity. And there's going to be, whether they're on Mars or whether they're here, it's the same issue of human nature. Mm-hmm. So we either decide to evolve to a higher plane of relationship or we don't. And that's the way I look at it. What are we regenerating? We are regenerating the capability for life to be in support of life. And until we learn to respect one another, we're not going to do it much for the environment. So it comes right back down to who am I and how am I developing and how am I in relationship? And that's politics. And until politics grows up, we don't have much of a shot. So I don't care, I think Mars and the moon is an interesting thing. We're not, it's always good to explore. Is it a lifeboat? No. No. If we haven't figured it out on this planet, we're not going to figure it out on Mars.
Yeah, I agree with you. When we talk about the future, we think about our children and what we are learning every day and doing for our future, our personal and our family and everyone's future. And research is a big part of this. We had a lot of questions from students, existing or future students, wondering, are there specific topics? Are there points that haven't been addressed that could be very important for graduate students or even college students when they want to engage and they want to learn? Or do you have avenues or maybe school specifics or very large proposal or topics that could be addressed by those students that want to learn and move forward with research and new questioning?
Yeah, well, if you're asking how do you actually learn about regenerative thinking, is that really where you're focused on that question, Roxanne? I'm looking at the questions that you sent and trying to...
Yeah, I think that people want to know where can I learn? What can I do? Are there things that I should tackle? I had a graduate PhD student in a different conference yesterday asking, what hasn't been researched? What should I target specifically if I want to bring value to this discussion?
Well, okay, let me, there is, you don't need to research much. And thinking that, so we work with a number of indigenous peoples around the world, the Maori in New Zealand, Aborigines in Australia, some North American indigenous peoples. But Tecumseh, the Shawnee chieftain in the Cincinnati region, who almost assembled the North American tribes into a confederation to push the Europeans back into the ocean. He was a brilliant leader. And Tecumseh, when he first saw a book, and I'm grossly paraphrasing, said, "Oh no, the white man has frozen the word." I think that's a powerful statement. Frozen the word. And he may not have even said it like that, but that's the way I interpret it, is that when you look for research, it's already dead. And basically, this is a continual process of evolution and respect for the way life works. You have all the capability of research right in front of you and paying attention over the years. So the best research you could do is actually learn to think like a deeply indigenous person. That's the best research. Now, Tecumseh also said, and I need to learn how to read. So the paradox is really important, is that it's both really important and not important. And so certainly there's lots of great, I'll go back to spiritual traditions, the masters of wisdom. There's from 4,000 years ago, we have peoples who actually have been looking at how life works, and they've created frameworks for us to understand them. But the linear thinking that came out of the Enlightenment, meaning reductionist thinking, make things smaller and smaller and smaller, and expect to understand it, is also what's destroying us. It's extremely powerful and it's extremely debilitating. You have to do both, just like Tecumseh. Oh no, the white man's frozen the word, and I got to learn how to read because it's important.
Be part of the process.
That's good. That's a good answer. And I mean, Regenesis offers a continuing education, continual courses in terms of thinking about this level of complexity and kind of the frameworks that peoples have used over the millennia for doing so. That's what Regenesis offers the world. There are other people doing very similar being state work, like Otto Scharmer of Theory U. That's how do you actually work with emergence is the big
With
question.
emergence?
Emergence. Life is continually emerging. I mean, I'm grossly generalizing. We think we can control life. I have clients saying, Bill, you're always changing the agenda, or your shifted focus. Aren't you in charge? And I said, no, I'm not. And he said, well, you should be. And I said, are you in charge? I said this to a CEO one time. I said, are you in charge? And he looked at me, he didn't answer the question. I said, if you were in charge, you would not have needed to hire us. So we don't have charge with the way life evolves. We have to actually, I like to use the expression, we surf emergence. You surf the way the energies that are always present, just emerging, paying attention. That's what regeneration requires of us, is to pay attention to what's coming in front of us and being sensitive. That's what indigenous peoples do so well. They evaluate, when they were living in relationship, they evaluated how they as a people were doing in their context. And then what do we need to change going forward? Life is not static, it's not stable. Well, by participating in the dynamics of evolution, we actually have dynamic stability. Let's take a prairie, for instance. The prairie has diverse niches of capability that can handle drought, buffalo stampedes, insect infestation, fire, freezing weather, multiple forces that would destroy a monoculture. But the prairie keeps coming back. And it keeps coming back because there are multiple resources to be able to be utilized. As a people in a community, each individual is a resource, unlike any other. And if we allow that to be tapped into, remember in the conference talk, I discussed about working with inherent potential, innate capability. That's the job of regeneration, is to allow that innate capability to be expressed, and organizing people in such a way that we're able to communicate that and move forward and allow multiple parallel solutions to happen at the same time. Not trying to control it, but being aware and continually evaluating how we're doing. That's the kind of control we need, paying attention.
In that regard, it's the environment and the surroundings around us that are in charge, and not us.
Exactly. Well, it's both. It's both. We are nature too. And we have to actually make some decisions about that, but we have to make conscious decisions, and we have to pay attention then to those, how life outside of us is affected by our decisions. Unless we are adding value to that system, we are destroying ourselves. So we have to pay attention to the health of that system, which we have not done, of course, until now, which is kind of late. But is that making sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Definitely. Yeah, I think it definitely answered a lot of the questions that the people had. It brings to my mind a lot of other questions, definitely. But what
well, let's hear one of those questions.
Well, what I get from this sense of self is that maybe that people would need to focus on how they feel within themselves before even wondering if they are comfortable in an environment, because whether they bring this self-awareness to any place, they can actually have a good impact. Where we are in the manufacturing world is we discuss money, we discuss logistics. It's all very, very down to earth today. So I'm wondering how to incorporate short-term decisions that need to be made today in regards to what will happen through a broader view, and how we do that with shifting people in the organization and always movement of people that are working on specific projects. So how do you make the short-term decision in regards to a long-term impact that you want to have?
Well, that's a simple answer, is that you actually get everybody aimed in the same direction. And if you have people in the organization who are not interested in that aim, then they probably should not be part of that organization. They should be somewhere else. I'm not telling you what your aim should be, but it's really important to have people aligned around the same belief, the same
And
north.
to carry through this with the people that you're interacting, to kind of pass the knowledge or this awareness on, so that it doesn't get lost with one element of the team.
That's right. And so that's one of the most important things, is to make sure you're all aiming in a, if not the same, at least an aligned direction.
The means can be different if the goal is
Absolutely. The means are almost, infinite. But it's not, it's not just a goal, it's potential. Goals are you achieve goals on the way to achieving potential. And what's that potential? Who knows? When do you reach perfection? Whatever that means. When are you done evolving? Whatever that means. So, I used to ask the question in integrative systems thinking, when do we stop integrating? Well, never.
That's a rhetorical question, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a question, and it probably is rhetorical, is that we integrating, well, I'm integrating with you right now, Roxanne. And how do we continue that? Maybe if we spent more time together, we would get to know each other better, and that would be a higher level of integration and mutual respect. And then who else do we embrace in that friendship, right? And how do we actually support the ongoing ability of friendship, which means that we have to pay attention to the environment around us. If we're not breathing well or drinking poison water, then that's going to end that. So I have to include a bigger and bigger system in that. It doesn't stop.
No.
That's why Native peoples, when you ask them where they start and talk, I had the greatest compliment I ever got was from a Maori elder in New Zealand who said, "Bill, you believe what we do. How do you convince the white man?" And I'm a pasty-faced white guy, right? So I thought that was a pretty cool statement. I said, "Listen, buddy, I'm not here to tell you anything. I'm here to learn from you. What do you do to convince the white man?" He said, "Well, we start with the universe." And I said, "Well, that sounds exactly right to me, because those patterns." Bucky Fuller said the same thing. Start with the universe. I said, "Well, how's that working for you?" He said, "Well, it's not." Okay. Well, maybe we have something to talk about, because what we're trying to do is work it from that other way, work it from the perspectives we have in our European lifestyles, North American lifestyles right now. How do we actually shift our thinking? And that's what our work is about, Roxanne, is how we shift thinking. I don't know, I think I'm wandering all over the place now. So
No. It's very interesting. And I think actually that it's a good roundup of the discussion that we've had, how we interact through the universe and through smaller scale. And yeah, it's very, very interesting. Thank you so much for all of this. And I don't think that people will think that it's all over the place, but at the same time, isn't that the point?
Yeah, kind of is.
Great. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Reed. It was very, very interesting.
Well, call me Bill. What is this?
Okay.
Mr. Reed?
Great. Thank you, Bill. I had a
Roxanne.
great time. Thank you so much.
Hope to see you sometime. Bye-bye.
Yes, same. Thanks.